Hello, everyone, and welcome to the WICT Rocky Mountain Roundtable Reflections on Leadership. The whole reason we're here today is that this is the 10-year anniversary of the WICT Gala. And over the last 10 years, each one of you at one point or another was named Woman of the Year. So the idea is to get together today and talk about things that reflections on the last 10 years, now, and things going forward. So just to baseline, riddle me this: first job in cable or what you wanted to be when you grew up, whichever is most colorful. Anyone?
Wow, I started as a temp worker at Mind Extension University, MEU, the Education Network.
Which was at Jones.
Which was at Jones. Mm-hmm. And it was the opening of an amazing, into an amazing industry and an amazing career. Who knew?
Who knew? Michelle?
I wanted to be a gymnast, which I was when I was younger, and a lawyer, so that makes me just really flexible and argumentative today.
That's working for you.
I wanted to be a physical therapist, and but I let one comment that you had to be so good at math scare me away from going that direction.
Wow.
And so I learned not to put so much weight on what someone else's view was.
Okay.
My first job was at TCI, and I was hired by that woman of the year right over there, Colleen Abdullah.
Wow.
To do what?
It was to launch digital cable.
Okay, is that what you wanted to do? Because I didn't hear anyone say, you know, I was a little kid and I wanted to be in the cable television industry. Of course.
Didn't know what that was.
Yeah, it didn't exist.
No idea. It didn't exist, right.
Okay, how about a defining moment, that epiphany where, you know, something big happened at work, and on the scale of winces, if a 1 is a stub toe and a 5 is getting the flu and the 10 is getting hit by a truck, this was somewhere around a 9. But you dealt with it and you came away feeling that you handled it with grace and that aligned your confidence in yourself as a leader. Everybody usually has one of those defining moments in their working life.
I have a David Beddoe story.
I was in Hong Kong with David Beddoe negotiating with Apstar Satellite, and the two guys on the other side of the table, it was just David and I, were kind of kidding and saying, well, you know, if we can take you on a date, you know, I was probably 23, so I looked a little different than now, then, you know, we'll negotiate, etc. And so David stopped the meeting and said, listen, we need to take a break. You know, I need to get Michelle's input on this deal. And then they all left the room. He took out a cigarette, smoked it, and I said, what did you want to take? Nothing, this is ridiculous. And then they came back, and the whole meeting changed.
So he was
and
like...
the respectfulness that these people gave to me, because David went out of his way to do that for me, was astounding. And I hope I learned something, and I try to do that for people who work for me today. It's empowerment.
I had an early lesson on life balance. The first company that I worked for in cable closed the office that I was in, and it was probably 5 years, 6 years into my career. And so we had a very tight-knit group. There were 15 of us. We were fantastic, you know, co-workers, and they closed the office. And so our mantra became, it's not a career, it's a job. And that sounded really negative, but it ended up being something that that lasted my entire career, because I didn't get too overachieving and too over or unbalanced about the job. And it really did, it allowed me to have a really good balance between career and home and family, et cetera.
When I went to work for Jones Intercable, I was hired as a systems analyst, and that was my first foray into cable. And after being there for a couple of years, I wanted to become a broker. And I was told that, you know, there are no women doing this. Are you sure you can do that?
What was the time frame?
In 1979.
Okay.
And so finally I bugged them enough that they let me become a broker. But what happened to me, when you go out into the field and you are a woman alone, especially in the late 70s, early 80s, it was certainly a lot different than it is now. There was none of the harassment rules and things like this. I'll never forget the first system that I looked at. I was meeting with the guy that owned it, and I said, okay, now can I see your head end? And he looked at me and he says, honey, I'll show you my head end. Wow. So, you know, it has changed, but it took a lot of years for it to change, and I think it still is changing.
Any others?
I had one. It was a few years ago, and I was new in a position, and I was overseeing, kind of had a broad area of responsibility, and I was a little nervous coming into the job because I wasn't quite sure that I had all the right experience. But the person who hired me said, you know, oh, don't worry. If you ever have a problem or you have an issue, just come to me and I'll help you solve it. So a couple months later, I had an issue that came up, and I took one of my employees with me and went in to meet with this person and laid out the problem, and this person looked at me and said, oh, so you want me to do your job for you instead of you doing it yourself. It was one of those defining moments where you sort of feel like you want to cry, but you can't because you have to buck it up and be an executive woman. And I learned so much from it because at the time, as I said, I was about ready to cry and sort of pick up, you know, take my toys and walk out the door and go home. And but I didn't. And I kind of surprised myself because I kind of set up and sort of called this person on it and said, you told me when you hired me if I had a problem I could come to you for help, so I'm doing that now. And within about 60 or even 30 seconds, the whole tone of the meeting changed, and all of a sudden I started to get the help I needed. But it was kind of a defining moment for me that you have these events that occur where you have to dig down deep and kind of suck it up and defend yourself, and which is not always a feminine thing to do. That's more of a man's thing to do. You know, as women, we tend to want to back down. And I learned that, you know, when I got pushed, I could push back.
I'd love to talk about a defining moment for myself. And actually, it's not just a single moment, it's several moments, and those moments come at the time of change. You know, you cannot be in this industry and be a stranger to mergers, acquisitions, downsizing, right-sizing, all of those, you know, types of initiatives that are right for the business, but they involve people. So for me, my defining moments have been moving forward and doing what's right for the business, but at the same time paying close attention to what's right for the people and leading them through change so that they come out the other side whole and have a sense of purpose and direction in whatever their new stage may be. That, for me, really calls upon everything I am as a leader and is defining.